Hello and welcome to another author event at the Poison Pen Bookstore. I'm John Charles, and today the Poison Pen is delighted to have with us four of the most charming authors currently working in the publishing business. There you go. Nicholas George, Sheila Roberts, Erica Ruth Neubauer, and Paige Shelton. For those of us joining us today, we had hoped Colleen Cambridge would be here. She's currently stuck in what's termed flight hell in Houston, so we do not know whether she will be here or not. I think Barbara already announced this, so I'm probably repeating it. But we will be able to get books signed. If you want to get copies today, we'll somehow get them to Colleen and get them back to you. It just may take a little bit of time. If this is your first time attending an event, welcome. We'd love to have you come back. The best way to find out about who's coming to the bookstore is to sign up for our e-news. It's real easy to do. On your way out, stop at the front desk. We can get you signed up, or you can write it on our pad, and we'll get you information about authors coming each week, books coming into the bookstore. It's really a valuable resource. And now I'd like to welcome our authors, George, Erica, Sheila, and Paige. My first question for each of you is, I'm always fascinated because authors are not born like Athena out of the head of Zeus. They have a previous life somewhere. So what can you tell us about who you were before you became a published author? And I did do some research. I'm a librarian, so if you don't share it with us, I will share it with the audience. And we'll start with you, George. Nicholas, I'm sorry.
I did start out as a writer. I was a newspaper reporter out of college, and I quickly realized I was not getting rich doing that, and the opportunity came up to get into corporate communications, public relations, and working for large corporations, which wasn't quite as juicy and exciting in some ways, but it paid the bills. So I did that for many years and worked both directly for large corporations and as a consultant, and there are two people I used to work with back there in a professional association that I was with, who I'm very pleased to see them here. But I always wanted to be a novelist. I always wanted to do that. And when you're working full time, it's hard to muster up the energy or the time to write a book. I tried a lot of times, but I never could get it right. So when I finally retired from that day job a few years ago, I thought, okay, now's the time I'm going to do it. And here I am.
Sheila, what about you?
Well, I actually wanted to become a famous songwriter, and I look back and go, oh my gosh, I could have built a whole addition on my house from what I spent on trips to Nashville and song demos and all kinds of crazy stuff, trying to become the next, I don't know, the female equivalent of Garth Brooks. And I want you to know, Garth and I are just like that. So. Anyway, that obviously did not work out. While I was banging my head against the wall trying to become a famous songwriter, I was also dabbling in writing. I'd been writing books. This is too funny. A little kid, in grade school, and I'd write some fabulous story. And then my teacher would, "Little Sheila, do you want to read your book for the class?" And the class is like, "Oh, no, not another Sheila book," captive audience. So anyway, I just sort of fell into, I think I have an idea for a book. And I think I'll get an agent. And I think I'll become a writer. And lo and behold, I kind of stumbled into my writing career. And my husband said, "You know what? Why don't you do this? You're actually making some money at this." And so that's how I decided, I think maybe I'll be a writer. So that's my story.
Erica, or Paige.
So back in when I was graduating from high school and getting ready to go to college, I was in Des Moines, Iowa. And I was also going to go to college in Des Moines at Drake. My dad was the football coach there, so I got to go free, which was fabulous. Can you imagine if we had that now? So I was deciding, and I thought, I just want to be a creative writer. That's all I ever wanted to be. I want to write stories. And so I went to Drake, and I thought, I can't major in that, though. That doesn't seem very reasonable. So I'll do journalism. Why not? So I went into journalism, and I did get my degree. I was so bad. Oh, so bad. I didn't have the right presence for television. Radio was okay, but there was nothing going on in radio. As far as writing for the newspaper, I just didn't quite have what I needed to be successful there. So I went into advertising. which I loved. I really, really loved it. I went into TV advertising, newspaper advertising. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, but I really wanted to work. I really wanted to write. So in 1997, oops, I gave it away. But anyway, in 1997.
You were 12, right?
I was 12, right. I was so smart. But anyway, I decided, okay, I'm going to take this seriously. I need to get a book by Y2K, 2000. I mean, because even in 1997, we were talking about how year 2000 was going to be a disaster. So I can surely be published by year 2000. I didn't get published until 2010. So it took me that long just to get an agent and then get a book under my belt. So it took me a while, and I feel fortunate that I've been able to do that now for almost 15 years.
Erica?
That's exciting. I took a real circuitous route to get here. So I spent 11 years in the Air Force, 2 years as a Maryland police officer, 1 as a high school English teacher, and then I reviewed mysteries and crime fiction for Publishers Weekly and Mystery Scene magazine. And then I got here. Also got my private investigator's license during the pandemic, as you do. I don't know. Yeah, so that's how I got here. I had always wanted to be a writer, but it's a big, scary thing. And so I didn't really sit down to try it until I had been reviewing mysteries for quite a few years. And my goal was to get my book published before my 40th birthday, and I made it.
Yay. Okay, let's have you tell us a little bit about the book that brought you here, and we'll start with you, Erica.
Okay. In what way? Brought me here? Like
Your latest book.
my latest book, yes. I thought you meant like Nancy Drew. I was like, Nancy Drew, yes.
We'll get to
brought
that a
us
little
here
bit later.
today.
in the
We're all
program.
ready with Nancy Drew.
So the book that brought me here today is my 5th book in the Jane Wonderly series. My books move from place to place. The first one is set in Egypt. Second one's an English manor house mystery. Third's on a transatlantic cruise. 4th is Istanbul. This one is Scotland. It is set on the Scottish Isle of Iona. It is has to do with the occult. There's an occult group that my protagonist is infiltrating to try to get some information. And somebody dies.
Paige?
Somebody dies in mine too. It's so fun. Anyway, the book that brought me here today is actually called The Poison Pen. It is the 9th book in my Scottish bookshop mystery series. The first one began with The Cracked Spine, which is the name of the bookshop my protagonist, Delaney, left Kansas to cross over the ocean to go work for, behind the desk that had seen the likes of kings and queens. And she's had a wonderful adventure, and she solved a lot of murders along the way and made a whole new Scottish family. But that's why I'm here today.
Sheila, what about you?
I'm like the cuckoo in the nest here. I'm just like, nobody died. Nobody died in my book. I'm really sorry, you guys. There is a little bit of a Jane Eyre type mystery going on in mine, but mine is the Best Life Book Club. And as you can probably imagine, it is about some friends who end up getting together and starting a book club and having their own little personal journeys and adventures along the way. And I feel like it's a little bit of an homage to books, because isn't that all why we're here? We all love books. I mean, what would we do without books? So that's it.
Nicholas?
Yeah, my book is my first book, so this is a debut book for me, and it's the first. Thank you. It's the first in a series called the Walk Through England mystery series, and they all take place on guided walks in England. My main character is a man named Rick Chasen. He's a former San Diego police detective, and when this first book starts, he's at a dark place in his life. His long-term partner has recently passed, and he's dealing with that grief. So he gets an invitation from a friend of his who he walks with frequently, a woman named Billy, to join her on a walk in southwest England, in Devon. So soon he's walking with 8 other people on the southwest coast past in England, and somebody dies. And the police are kind of baffled. They don't really understand how somebody would be killed when they didn't really know anybody else on the walk, and everybody was walking at a distance from everyone else. So they find out Chase, who's my main character's nickname, they found out he was a former police detective and enlists, and he helps them track down the killer.
That's great. I want to talk a little bit, each of you, tell me about the hook, and how I'm defining that as each of you in your book have something that anchors the story, whether it's walking in England, a book club, a Scottish book club, a Scottish bookshop, or travel. Why did you choose that particular thing to anchor your story? And we'll start with you, Nicholas.
Well, like I said, the walking anchors the book and the ones that follow. So there's that. But I think it also, my main character is an older gay man like myself, and so he's dealing with issues in his life that a lot of elderly people do. But I thought it was interesting to show that through the lens of an older gay character, which I don't tend to see too much, and explore that through the following books as well.
So each book will be set in a different part of England?
Yes, each book will be set in a different part of England. So the next one will be in the Lake District, and the one after that in Cornwall. So you kind of can travel around the country that way.
And because I was a bit ignorant, there is a difference between walking and hiking.
I'm asked this. I've been asked this before. And yeah, well, it depends on who you talk to. I think there's a difference. I think walking is, we can walk anywhere. You can walk out the door here and just take you wherever your feet lead you. Hiking to me is more of a, you're going in the mountains and you have a pack on your back, and it's a lot of work. I like to walk. I don't like to hike, even though I may walk in the mountains and all of that. It just I distinguish between the two that way.
Sheila, why a book club for your book?
Wow. I'm just wondering, is anybody here in a book club? Just out of curiosity. Oh, yeah. So I see some people who are in book clubs. And, I think it was fun to do that because in this book, I wanted to celebrate. I know I keep jabbing on my purse. I'm sorry. Wanted to celebrate both books and friendship, because I suspect, as in my case, you become friends with those people that you read with, don't you? And you share that commonality of loving books and celebrating books and learning from books. Even I am a firm believer that we can learn from books, whether they're fiction or nonfiction. There's always some takeaway that we can get from a book. And I thought it was fun to celebrate that. And the book has got a quote at the beginning of each chapter, and only one author mentioned in this book is real. The rest are just authors and books I made up and wonderful quotes, and I should write those books. Those are really good. But anyway, that's kind of it. I thought it would be fun to just celebrate the combination of friendship and books.
Well, you also created an author for a previous series that you carry over, didn't you?
I have. When they talk about finding little Easter eggs, there are always little Easter eggs somewhere in my books. And one of the authors in the book, Muriel Sterling, I'm beginning to think she might be my alter ego. Either that or she's my therapist, because she shows up in books all the time. She's always written some kind of fabulous self-help book, and she always has some fabulous advice. And I'm going, I should listen to Muriel more often.
Paige, what about Scotland and bookshops made you want to write mysteries?
I wanted to go to Scotland, and I wanted to write off the trip. That simple. That simple. So the way to do that is to go for book research and back it up with a book. It was pretty much that simple, and it was worth every minute of it. It was so fantastic. It was the best 7 days. It was fast because we had a lot to look at, but it was really wonderful. It's a great place.
Erica, why 1920s and why travel?
The 1920s. Well, the travel is for a similar reason, as I love to travel and I love to write it off on my taxes. But also the 1920s is because my dad raised me on old black and white movies and old Agatha Christie masterpiece mystery that The Wailing Woman was the soundtrack of my childhood, right? So I knew when I wanted to sit down and write a mystery that I wanted to set it in the 20s and I wanted to set it in Egypt, because I had picked up very romantic ideas about that time period, about that place. I had very, it may have been a movie I saw at some point when I was a kid, but very elegantly dressed people in their flapper outfits and the slow fans turning overhead and a dead body in the corner. So I knew that's exactly what I wanted to do.
We're here today as part of Cozypalooza, and cozy is cool now because you see it creeping over into other genres. Sheila actually would like to call you cozy adjacent because there's no murder in your books, but you do have some of the same qualities that cozy readers look for. So I'm going to ask each of you, and you can choose what order you'd like depending on who comes up with an answer first. How do you define cozy? Why do you think it's so popular with readers?
I'll take a shot at it. I know why I enjoy it, and that it sort of relates to that word, cozy. It makes you kind of feel good. You're with a community of people in the book who are all, usually involved with one another, usually in family or in a community they live, and so you get that sense of family in the book. And there's usually humor in it, and and even though there is a murder, and so there is that darkness in it, it's offset by that family atmosphere that seems to pervade the books. And there's no violence, there's no harsh language, there's no explicit sex usually, and depending on your taste, that may or may not be a good thing. But it does give you kind of that warm feeling. And so once you finish the book, you feel like, okay, I've spent some time with people I really like, and I would like to know them more, and I would like to read the next in the series and the next one.
I'm just going to sit here and look cute because I think he said it all.
Yes, but
the kind of the parameters, at least back in the day, back when I first started this, was amateur sleuth, community, maybe a hook of some sort, for instance, the Scottish bookshop hook, for instance, the cupcake mystery hook from the very fabulous Jen McKinley in the back, a library lover's hook. There's always a hook. All the bad stuff is off the page. When they say bad stuff, the graphic sort of things. But I did not know this. So when I did first get my agent, and the first novel that I sent her that she took me on for didn't sell. I mean, it just bombed. And she said, well, you have a cozy mystery kind of voice. And I said, I love cozy mysteries. So we started to talk about ideas, and we hung up the phone, and then I hightailed it. I was in Salt Lake City. I hightailed it to Barnes & Noble, and I found a bookseller, and I said, can you please tell me what a cozy is? So I had no idea. But so the parameters back then, and I think they're kind of still the same, but I think that Nicholas phrased it well. It leaves you with a warmer feeling. It's not as graphic, and it's not about suspenseful and scary kind of stuff.
Yes.
Oh, I have a thought. Also, do you think it seems like all the cozies have to have a really cute, catchy title? Is that kind of part of that? Do you think? No? Yes?
It is for a lot of them. I kind of ride the line between cozy and traditional historical. So mine all do not have the punny, fun titles.
I think it's a thing, but I'm not sure. I think it is a thing, but I don't think it is as much of a thing as maybe it used to be. I think that the clever punny titles are still out there, and they still come along. But I think that's transitioning a little. Yeah.
now, Sheila, you successfully avoided this question, but I'm coming back to you. Because one of the things mentioned was community, and you've actually written several series set in small towns and communities. Tell us about those.
Well, that's true. I mean, I am a big believer in the sense of community. I've been around since dust, so I've done a lot of stuff. But I've done a couple of series. One was set in the mountain town of Leavenworth, Washington. I don't know if have anybody ever been to Leavenworth? Isn't it fun, especially at Christmas? It's a German-themed town, and it's really cute and, well, cozy. And so populate that with some people, and it's fun. You can keep revisiting that fun little town. And then I did one set in a fictional town called Moonlight Harbor on the Washington coast. And again, a series of characters. You have kind of your anchor character, which you also have in a mystery series, right? Don't you have your anchor character who just always happens? Remember Murder, She Wrote? I remember my husband saying, I wouldn't want to be friends with this woman. Everywhere she goes, somebody dies, but it's kind of like you've got your anchor character that people want to come back and keep visiting and seeing. And so I think there is a lot to be said for series. How many of you out there like to read series where you've got returning characters? Yeah, kind of fun to do.
Okay, you answered the question.
Thank you.
I'll give you that. My next question for each of you is tell us about how you approach your book from the writing standpoint, because I would think as a reader, if you're writing a mystery or even a book, you need to kind of know where you're going. But I've been surprised by the number of authors who say, no, I just sit down and let inspiration take me. So how do you start your books? How does it work for you?
I think I originally took that approach, I'll just see where it takes me, and I quickly realized I was getting lost. And if I was getting lost, the reader certainly was going to get lost. So I learned that at least for me, if you're writing a mystery, it has to be, you have to plot it out. You have to make sure all of the clues are set in the right place. All the puzzle pieces go together. You can't introduce a clue and not resolve it at some point. So it really becomes much more complex than I was expecting it to be. I mean, it's still fun to write, but I do have to put a spreadsheet together to see, okay, where's this character in this particular part of the book, and am I leading the reader to the resolution of the book properly? And I don't want to mislead the reader, but I also want to trick them a little bit. So it's a delicate balance, and it's not easy.
Interesting. Well, I'm with you. I'm big on planning. I think that's really important to do. People, I'm just going to where it takes me. If I do that, it takes me off in the fog, lost in the mist, going, where's land? So I think it's really important. Not that every single detail is planned in the book. And here's a good mystery metaphor. I think of my book as the skeleton. Anyway, so here's my spine, here's the basic here, and then I'm going to put flesh on it as I go along, and I may take some detours along the way, but I have the basic thing outlined. And I got to say, you guys, I did write a mystery once. I finally put it up as an ebook, but I rewrote that darn thing 7 different times, each time with a different bad guy. I thought, my brain is not complex enough. I can't do this. I don't know how mystery writers do it. It's like putting together a puzzle, isn't it? And you've got to make sure you've got all the pieces to the puzzle. So
I spend my first drafts in the fog looking for land. That's exactly, I'm completely by the seat of my pants. Every book, there you go. There you go.
I'm impressed.
Yes. Completely by the seat of my pants. I have no idea who the killer is. I really don't even know the victim all that well. It takes me until about page 200 of my first draft to figure out what this book is going to be, which means my second draft is very labor intensive, of course, but there's just absolutely no way I can't see a story. I can go with a spark sometimes, something like in The Poison Pen, the queen died, sadly, and that was my spark for the entire book, but that was really all I had. That was it.
I'm also a pantser. Just pantsing my life. Yeah, I don't have any. I usually have like an idea of what it is, but I also just sit down every morning and figure out what happens that day. And like for my first book, I didn't know who the killer was until 3/4 of the way through. And I said, did this person do it? And I went and looked, and they had. That person had done it. So yeah, same thing. But the subsequent drafts are always a lot of work, because then you have to make sure all of the clues are there and that everything does work. But I tried writing to an outline once, and I really hated it. So I'm a pantser.
We're very fortunate to have on the panel an author who's making his debut, as well as an author who's been around since the dawn of time. We'll let you guess which one is. Now that you've been published, what do you wish someone had told you when you were first starting out as an author, each of you? What knowledge did you think this would have made my life easier?
You want to start? Nope. Okay. I'll start. I wish somebody had told me that nobody cares as much about your books as you do. You have a publisher, you have editors, you have multiple editors, you have multiple people looking at your books, but you cannot depend on anyone to make your book pristine other than yourself.
I also wish someone had told me how many times I was going to have to read it before. Like, it is so many times that you have to go through that book, and you don't want to look at it anymore. Yeah.
I think I would echo what Erica said. I didn't realize I was going to have to read it as much as I did, and part of that is every time you read it, you always find something you want to change. And so, you know, they say authors never really finish a book, you abandon a book eventually. And so I think that I didn't really fully understand that until I had to go through it. But again, this is my first book, so I'm still learning a lot.
Oh, you have much fun ahead of you. Gosh, I don't. It's hard to, because I have been around since the pterodactyls flew, and so it's, you know, it's hard to go back and go, you know, what did I really want to learn? There are phases though when it comes to a book that we go through. There's the I love you phase. Oh, this is such a great book. Then there's a okay, I'm going to make you all beautiful phase. And then there's the, you are really ugly and I hate you phase, you know. And then there's the final, okay, that wasn't so bad. And then, but I tell you what, once my books are out, I don't read them. And I think one thing I would have told myself is, be a little more patient, make sure you take time, get someone to read it besides you, your critique partner, your editor, and anybody else. One of the, and I've crashed my career, I've done all kinds of things. One of my early career crashes, I was writing a Regency novel, and I'm going to write a serious book, and I'm really not all that serious when it comes to books, so that was a challenge. But anyway, so I had my little heroine, and everybody thought she was a fortune hunter. She's married the Earl, and things are happening to the Earl. Somebody's trying to kill the Earl. Oh, see, that was almost a mystery. Someone's trying to kill the Earl. Anyway, so lo and behold, I made the bad guy the Earl's stepbrother. I don't know if any of you, how many of you could, I'm not going to tell you yet, how many of you know what I did wrong? The would-be murderer was trying to kill his stepbrother. We're in England. Anybody want to take a guess? Okay, well, I didn't know this either, and my critique partner didn't catch it, my editor didn't catch it, the copy editor didn't catch it. The person who caught it was the editor for Romantic Times magazine. This is not a good thing, let me tell you. Anyway, in England, the succession goes from blood relative to blood relative. If I'd have made him even a half-brother, what was I thinking? I made him a stepbrother. So I think what I would tell my younger self is, will you just make sure you've done your research better? And I still do. Little things get by me. One more thing, this is years ago, again, a book that I'd written, and it was a book on it was kind of my little finance, since I'm not a finance person, but I think I know it all. I wanted to write a finance book, and my agent said, nobody's going to listen to you, you don't know anything. I thought, fine, I'll put it in a fiction. And so I did this fiction book, and I had this one character and kind of a money stuff going on. I got a letter from a reader one time saying, Sheila, I'm a little confused. In one part of the book, Rachel has this deadbeat sister who's wasting her money, and then later on, she's an only child. And I said, well, what can I say? She killed her sister. I mean, you know, what can you do? It's too late. It's in print. So, you know, it's like, okay, be careful what you do, because once it's in print, there it is for all the world to read.
You have a lot of murder.
Yeah, I don't know, Sheila. You might be.
I might have the heart of a murderer. I might have the brain to figure out how to write a mystery.
Let's take a little bit of a detour and talk about each of you as a reader. Who are some of the books that inspired you? Who are some of the books that made you think, I want to do this myself? What were the important books in your life?
I think I got hooked as a kid, a teenager. Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie brings us a lot of people into mysteries, and I read And Then There Were None. That was, my jaw dropped. I thought, this was, you know, this is amazing. This is incredible. And I started reading everything she ever wrote, and then she led me to the other Golden Age British writers like Dorothy Sayers, and then I started reading American counterparts, so Raymond Chandler and John D. MacDonald and Private Eye books. So, you know, I just kind of went from author to author rather than specific book to specific book. But that's what hooked me on mysteries and the various forms they can take.
I want to ask you, let me take over John Charles' job. I'm so sorry, John Charles. But I want to know, when did you decide, well, I could do this? I mean, because this is your first book, so when did you say, well, okay, these guys have done this, I can do this?
Well, I think when I was in high school, I thought I could probably do this, but then I thought, I could never make a living at that, though. I don't think I could ever actually, you know, support myself doing that. So I made a few, like, very pale attempts at starting something like that, but I didn't. I think the first time I wrote a mystery, I was in my 40s when I actually tried to sit down and write one from beginning to end.
Okay, well, for me, just getting hooked on books, like I had mentioned earlier, I was writing little stories and books when I was a kid, and so I think I always wanted to be that. But we were all talking in the back room about one of the big influences for us was Carolyn Keene as young girls, and yeah, everyone here is nodding her head. And I told the ladies, I feel it was kind of like learning there's no Santa Claus. I didn't realize Carolyn Keene was more than one person, and I only learned that in the last few years. I'm like, what? She's more than one writer? Oh my goodness. And so that was a bit of a shock. But I think most young women and girls, a lot of us got hooked, right, on Carolyn?
Okay. Yes, Carolyn Keene. Also, Phyllis A. Whitney was one of my absolute heroes. I would hurry down to the B. Dalton bookseller in the downtown mall in Cincinnati, back when we lived in Cincinnati, just to find a new Phyllis A. Whitney. And I believe she died at the age of 104. And in my head, 104, is that right, Barbara? Yep, 104. And in my head, I have put her over her typewriter, and she just... And if I could choose a way to go, that would be it.
Yeah, I also started out on Nancy Drew. I remember the first one that my mom handed to me when I was in second grade, and it was The Secret at Shadow Ranch. And from there I went to Agatha Christie, and from there I went to Sue Grafton. But the person who inspired me to write this series was Ashley Weaver. I was sitting on my back deck with my best friend who was a librarian, and she was reading a book and I was reading a book, and it was a lovely afternoon. But I was reading Ashley Weaver's Ames series, and I kept putting it down and saying, like, I want to write something like this. So I have to credit Ashley Weaver.
Who has a new book coming out in case anyone's interested, and you can reserve it at the Poison Pen.
Nice.
Virtually, yes, we do have a program scheduled for her. She's an amazing writer. Before we run out of time and go to audience questions, tell us what's coming next for you. And why don't we start down at the end with Erica?
So next, have Jane is going to the south of India. She's going to an Indian hill station.
Wow.
There might be tigers.
Okay. Paige?
So in December, I have the 6th and final book of my Alaska Wild series, which is
wait, stop. Final?
It is the final book. Yeah, it's the final book. And it's a little more suspense. People have actually called it cozy thriller, and I like that. I kind of think that's fun. I like that, calling it that. But so that's coming in December. And then next year, Scottish Bookshop, which will come out about the same time next year. It's already turned in. It's called Written in Stone. Some of the stuff that I use in that is the Picts. And you guys know, have you heard about that particular group of people and the 300 to 700 and the tattoos and the red hair? And so I bring some of that history into next year's book.
These sound really good, you guys. Gotta say.
Yeah.
And pre-order, people, pre-order. Well, next around the corner for me will be Christmas. I usually write a Christmas novel, and this will be a bit of a Jane Austen's Emma in a Santa hat. So that will be coming come Christmas time.
I think I mentioned the next book in the Walk in England series takes place in the Lake District, and that'll be out next February. And my main character in the first book in this series meets someone who looks like it could become a love interest for him, and that then is explored further in the second book.
I have to ask, because it's the Lake District, does Beatrix Potter play any role?
It does.
Okay, great. Then I'll read it.
I won't say any more, but it does. Yes.
Why don't we go ahead and open the floor to questions? Okay. We've got an update.
I have an update, right. I haven't texted this much since forever. I finally just called her, the old-fashioned way. She is going to get in late this evening, and Ian in our back room has agreed to open up at 6 in the morning so she can come over here and sign your books before she catches her plane. And she will return in October, when she will fly first to Phoenix and then anywhere else for her next book. So she sends her apologies, but when you get stuck on the tarmac, there's nothing you can do, especially if you have that American app that keeps lying to you and says, It happened to me at Logan Airport, 24 hours at Logan. They started out by saying, come to the airport, and then it was, we lost your plane. And then it was, oh, we found a plane. And then it was, well, we have to service the plane. And then it just went on forever. Anyway, bless her heart. She's very unhappy she's not here, and she sends her apologies. So when you leave, please leave your book and make sure your name is in it up at the front desk, and she'll sign them all tonight. And then next time you're in, like for example, well, when are we doing our next live event?
Well, I don't know when you are, but I want to mention we have an event with Jen McKinley coming in June for her new book, so you'll definitely want to be here for that.
We do. I think actually we have a really interesting event on Wednesday. We have a constitutional scholar who is coming to talk to us, not about politics, but about all the compromises and holes and so forth that developed when our Constitution was written as a series of compromises between 13 colonies who really didn't want to get together. Our original, the Articles of Confederation, left us vulnerable because the two things that did not give the colonies the power to do was either raise taxes, levy taxes, or raise an army. So we were a country that had no revenue and no military, and they had to fix it. And in order to fix it, they came up with all these compromises and things that are really anachronistic today. And I will say, regardless of how you feel about the two candidates, that Mr. Trump has shown us where all the holes are in that fabric. And we should be paying attention and figure out whether we want to plug them or not. So that's Wednesday night, and that'll be actually fun, regardless of whether you think it won't be or not. And then I think we go all the way to March 20th or something like that. Sorry, May. I'm still talking to Colleen. No, it's a very weird month. And then if you're here this summer, as far as I can tell, we do not miss a day. And it's because the election is throwing everything into summer. So I'm actually run out of dates for authors, and I'm trying to back them up into other weeks and so forth. So if you're staying here this summer, it's cold here, and you can come in. John will bake. It'll be great.
The constitutional book sounds fun, but Jen's is still better. Hey, anything to sell a book. Okay, now we'll take questions. Any questions?
So in the state of Wisconsin, which is where I'm from, you have to find a private investigator who will take you on, basically, and train you. So you have to find somebody who is willing to do that. So I found a woman who basically runs a small school out of her own detective agency, and so trained with her and then got my license. I don't do it anymore, just so you know.
The question was asked by another fabulous author, Diane Freeman, by the way.
Yes, her books are fantastic.
And Diane will also be here in June for her new book. Other questions? Okay, I'll ask one because I'm intrigued by Erica's new book. It's got a cult in it. It's the 1920s. Did you base this on any real historical kind of thing?
I did. So I was out walking and listening to a spooky podcast, as I am wont to do, and I heard about, it's a true story, this woman, Netta Fornario, was a member of this occult group, the Order of the Golden Dawn, and she was on the Isle of Iona, and it seems like she had kind of a mental break, and they found her dead on the moor, naked except for a cloak, lying on top of a cross that had been carved into the ground. And it has never been solved. I think she probably died of exposure, and probably did have some, like a psychological issue. But I fell down a rabbit hole, and I was like, this is perfect, because it also happened in the 1920s, and I was like, excellent. So I will use this, and then I built the whole thing around it. I fell down a rabbit hole, started learning about the occult group that she was in, learned that William Butler Yeats was part of it at one point, so he's in the book, because I couldn't leave that on the table. Yeah.
That's great. Question way in the back. So the question is, when you're writing a book, do you think about it potentially being a movie or a television series? And does that change the way you write the book if you are thinking in that direction? You're welcome. Sheila, since you've had some experience in this area, why don't you go first?
Well, I just sort of stumbled into that with my writing. If anybody here is into either Lifetime or Hallmark, those were the networks that did my movies. And one of the ones that was a big hit, if only I got residuals. That thing plays a million times every Christmas.
Is it 9 Lives of Christmas?
Yeah, the 9 Lives of Christmas with the fireman and the cat, which is, they always jokingly say the book is better. Some of my best book scenes wound up on the cutting room floor, but there you go. Anyway, but I never started thinking in terms of a movie when I wrote those. They ask me if I do now. Yes. And I think sometimes in thinking in terms of mysteries, I'm not sure how that even translates toward a movie, but for the rom-com or the women's fiction, I'm realizing that the less characters on stage, the better, because the more actors you bring in, the more expensive it is. So, and I don't know, but there again, Hallmark has a whole mystery section now, right? So I don't know if you guys are thinking ahead to, hey, Hallmark would like to do my series. I don't know.
I would love it if Hallmark would like to do my series. I would love it if anybody would like to do my series in TVs or movies. I've had no offers, no bites whatsoever. I think it would be fabulous. I don't write thinking about that, but I do live my life thinking about that.
I would say probably the same. I don't at all write thinking about that. I also know that mine are more difficult because they're historicals, and those are really expensive to make. So probably won't happen. Although I would love to see it on like the BBC or Acorn or it'd be fantastic. But no, I don't think about it at all when I'm writing.
And no, I don't think about that when I'm writing. Although I think I do write, I do try to visualize the scenes and the characters. So I do kind of take a cinematic approach to the writing that way. But I don't really think about it becoming a film property when I'm writing.
Other questions for the authors?
When you're writing your books, do you find yourself going down a path and realize that's not going to take me where I want to go? And when you do you have to come all the way back, partway back? How do you regroup and correct that? Do you have a specific process you use?
I have to trust the process. And so if I feel like I'm not going the right direction because I write so much by the seat of my pants, I just have to write through it. I just have to keep going and then later come back around and maybe revise to what I have created later on. I have hit those paths like, oh, how am I going to get out of this? Well, we'll see. So it's not... It's never turn around and go back to the beginning. I will not do that. I just don't have time. So I just have to keep going and then maybe come back later. Yeah.
I agree with that. And I also keep a Word document open next to my Word document that I'm working in, and will make notes to myself along the way and be like, oh, you should add this, or oh, you should go back and change this later. You should fix this, so that I kind of know what I have messed up so far and can go back and fix it later.
And I think almost every author does encounter that problem where you get to a point you say, this is just not working out. And that's where it helps me to keep a spreadsheet or an outline. And I can look and see, okay, how far back do I have to go and rewrite something to correct that?
Other questions?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. It is a little more suspense. It's about Beth Rivers, who is a thriller writer who was kidnapped from her home in St. Louis and was kept in her kidnapper's van for 3 days and abused. And she escaped the van. She came out of the van, rolled on the ground, ended up in the hospital, had a subdural hematoma removed, and then the killer or the kidnapper hadn't been caught, so she ran away to Alaska. She ran away to this very small area called Benedict, Alaska, which is very much like Gustavus, which is near the Glacier Bay National Park. And she ran away to there to hide. And on the way there, I mean, as she's there, she's had to solve other murders, as well as the arc of the 6 books is the capturing of her kidnapper and what happens along the way down in the lower 48 as well as up in Alaska. Thank you for asking.
Other questions?
The Alaska series is great. If you haven't read it, please do. I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
for its ending. It's
Thank you. Thank you.
My question is, in your writing process, do you do the same thing each time? Like, do you go to the same room? Do you surround yourself with the same utensils, typewriter? What do you do? Do you have little things that you do?
I have my writing desk, and that's where I do it. I don't usually write anywhere else, but I do walk a lot, and I do get a lot of ideas when I'm walking. So that's where the story gestates, I think, when I'm out being active. But no, I always do my writing in the same place.
I don't. Can do it all over the place. I will write on an airplane. I will write in coffee shops sometimes, or just sitting on my couch. Really depends. The only thing that's the same is coffee. Yes.
I just picture murder, she wrote. She's on her typewriter. What do? You have your cup of coffee and just sit at your desk and wait for it to come, you know?
My coffee is Diet Pepsi, but I start the day and pretty much end the day with Diet Pepsi. And I've tried writing all different places, and really the only place I can write is my office in my house. It's just a spare bedroom, and at my desktop. I've tried to write on my laptop. I have a little iPad that I take with me. I have an elderly mother. When I take her grocery shopping, I go wait for her, in a nearby restaurant, and it's usually I'm just surfing. So I try to write elsewhere, but mostly it's my office.
I pretty much same place. I've got a laptop, and I kind of have my favorite chair and just plug in. And I know a lot of writers, they have their little ceremony that they do, and they light their candle and they have their background music playing. And I can't do the background music playing because then I just want to sing along. And if I'm singing along, I'm not exactly writing. So usually it's the sounds of silence for me. There's just nothing playing unless it's instrumental music or something. But so yeah, sadly, no wonderful sexy author traditions. It's just me, my brain, and my laptop.
I think there's a reason you sing along, Sheila. Didn't you own a singing telegram business?
Yeah, I did. What did you own? The singing telegram company.
Oh, I love it.
I sang in bands. I did all kinds of stuff. Why? I'm a writer. It's a mystery to me. Oh yeah, because nobody wanted my songs. That's why.
Other questions?
Just bouncing off that last question, is there a specific type of software that you use when you're writing?
Like Scrivener or something like that? No, I just Word documents.
I fight with Microsoft Word every day of my life, and it usually wins, but I have yet to find anybody else I want to fight. So, yeah.
Same, just Microsoft Word.
Yes.
Most of your stories take place in the 1920s, but they're all in different countries. So when you're doing your research during the 20s, it's different for the different country that you're in for their time period, even though it's all in the 20s, right?
Yes.
So that's interesting.
It is. By moving each book, I made a lot of extra work for myself because I have to research a new place every single time. So there's a lot of research I do up front before I start writing. And so it's like, what is this place like in the 20s? But I really enjoy it. I enjoy being able to make each new location almost a character of itself.
Okay, last chance for questions.
John, we have a couple online.
Okay.
So we have one question about now that you're all published writers, would you or could you ever go back to not being a writer?
No. I really there's nothing else. I've done so many things and there's nothing else that I would want to do. This is what I want to do.
And you don't have to be published to be a writer. And I've been a writer my whole life because I really am not good at anything else. So that's what I always will be.
Oh, Yep. Same thing. I keep saying, I'm going to retire. But, golly, someday. It just, once a writer, always a writer, right, you guys? I think that's true. Pardon?
You better not retire.
Oh, you're so cute.
I saw someone said once, the only time I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing is when I'm writing. And I think that made a lot of sense. Even, when I was working in advertising or whatever, I'd be like thinking of things I needed to write about when I got home that night or during lunch break or whatever. So when I'm writing, I feel like I'm not distracted with other things I should be doing. I don't even do laundry, so.
Oh, yeah, you.
Is there another question? That was it. Before we go, can you tell us how we can find out more about you and your books? I know, Sheila, you're a mistress of TikTok. Is that correct?
Oldest girl on TikTok. Oh my goodness. Anything
Microphone,
social
Sheila.
media. It's
Microphone.
all Fun with Sheila sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Fun with Sheila or Sheila Roberts Writer. I'm all over the place. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and on my website is sheilasplace.com. So yeah, do come hang out with me. We have a lot of fun.
Nicholas?
Yeah, the usual social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, and I also have a website, nicholasgeorgeauthor.com, and I try to keep that pretty active and post quite often on that.
Paige?
PaigeShelton.com is my website. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Everything else terrifies me.
I'd say same, actually. Yeah, EricaRuthNeubauer.com, and then I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but
I want to thank all of our authors today for being here. They've just been wonderful. Thank you for joining us for another author event at the Poison Pen Bookstore. Let's thank our authors. Are we off, Patrick? Patrick?